All right, you're welcome back, and you're still watching Newsnight. We're live from Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. I am Christian Nogoda. Thanks for staying with us. Independent Judicial Accountability Panel is calling on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to ensure that the election officials designated by the Commission electronically transmit all election results immediately. This was part of the resolutions of the fourth session of the Independent Judicial Accountability Panel convened under the auspices of the City Act Project of Action Aid Nigeria. The body says electronic transmission of results will enhance the credibility of the process.
The election officials designated by the Commission shall electronically transmit all election results immediately after the prescribed result forms have been signed and stamped by the election officials and countersigned by the candidates or polling agents where available at the polling units and collation centers to a public portal designated by the Commission. The transmitted results shall be used to verify and confirm any other results before it is collated.
We've seen the number of litigations that go to our court systems at the election. Of course, more of it is pre-election cases. But the after election cases, the ones that go to the tribunal, there are still a large number. And these are the kind of things that promotes those cases. So how do we minimize those cases? Interpretation is very key. And that's why our proposal is simple, and it's also coming from citizens' perspective.
And let's have this conversation with the Chairman, Action Aid Independent Judicial Accountability Panel, Professor Adekunle Owoade. Prof, very warm welcome to Newsnight. I mean, the whole of the brouhaha around the 2026 Electoral Act Amendment,
yes,
as signed into law by Mr. President, is beginning to snowball under us. Why do you think the hue and cry is getting louder and louder? Because for some, analysts, the National Assembly is done what it considers best for the people, transmitting electronically, or in case there is a failure, manual transmission. Anything really wrong with that?
Well, there is nothing really wrong with that. But we had this opportunity, IJAP had the opportunity of looking into some of the sections of the new Electoral Act. And the one that concerns transmission is Section 60, subsection 3. We noticed that there are some ambiguities in that section that could lead to problems of interpretation. As you have stated, that could be right, but Section 63 makes provision for transmission. And then the proviso talks about if there is failure of such transmission, the Form EC8A will always, shall at all times be used for the purposes of collation. What we find out is that the words shall at all times in the proviso could mean one or two things, or perhaps more. First, that it will happen after the failure of the transmission. It could happen whether or not there was any failure of transmission. That is problematic. But beyond that is the fact that the purport of transmission was not explained or even adhered to under Section 63, which may suggest on the whole that the draftsman was more concerned with the failure of the transmission than the purport of the transmission. For example, the purport of the transmission is to verify and confirm the results. That is the entire purpose and the idea of transmission. So the EC88 could be compared with the transmitted ones.
Yeah.
There was
They must be in sync and the rest.
Exactly, exactly. There must be scene cameras. That was why the first portion of 60 refers to transmission to the IREV. But the first time that the Act now mentioned the purpose of transmission, which is affirmation, confirmation of the electoral results with the manual results, that was in section 62.4 rather. There was no connection any longer between the purpose
That's
and
from
the
section
failure.
60 now to 62.
Exactly, to 62.4. There was a disconnect, as it were, between 63 to 62.4.
But a lacuna must always be created, in legal drafting like this, so that lawyers can, earn their daily bread and the rest. And why are you not leaving it to the judiciary to interpret, to test the law? We don't seem to test our laws, do we?
In my opinion, and perhaps in IJAP's opinion, it's better to be as tidy as possible before you leave the rest to interpretation. As it is.
Is a law ever, tidy?
Seemingly tidy.
Yeah.
This is not seemingly tidy.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are trying to see that it should be at least fairly tidy.
And the seemingly untidiness, some people raise the eyebrow, the speed with which Mr. President signs the act or the bill into law becoming an act.
I will even have been more concerned with the speed of which the amendment itself was made, because now we are now pursuing further amendments. And in fact, for the purpose of section 63, IJAP went further to put up a draft, a possible draft, which, if time permits, the purpose of it is that it not only combines the idea of the failure, but also the purpose of the transmission.
There are quite a number of issues to really interrogate in the Act. Take, for example, the deadline for releasing election funds to INEC. It was halved from a full year to 6 months, and it raised concerns about potential logistics and planning bottlenecks. Do you think that this act may engender some problems that may make the 2027 elections an impossibility?
From what we have seen in the few sections we examined, we believe that there is enough time for further and purposeful amendments, even before the election, on the areas that are very, very important or germane to the election itself. That's the way I'll put it.
And you've also seen the Act raising campaign or election, campaign spending funds, billions of billions. I want to run as a councillor in my local government area. I need some good millions too for advertisements and campaigns and the rest. Nigeria's election or electioneering process is becoming monetary based in our own kind of economy and the rest. Would that help, make democracy indelible in the sands of time in this country?
Definitely no, because there must be access, and increased monetary fees will reduce access. There must be access.
So, your organization, Action Aid Independent Judicial Accountability Panel, will continue to agitate for further amendment to the 2026. Are you going to court?
No, our proposals will go to various other organizations, including the presidency, the National Assembly, and so on. We are advisory. We are giving advisory opinions. We're trying to say this can be done better. This can be done better.
Thank you so very much, Professor Adekunle Owoade. I wish we have enough time to interrogate this issue more, but there are other platforms on Arise News that you can come on and express deeper views on the Electoral Act 2026 as amended. Professor Adekunle Owoade is the chairman, Action Aid, Independent Judicial Accountability Panel. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.